April 16, 73 AD, Masada Fortress, Judea. Roman soldiers breach the walls at dawn. They expect battle, screaming, blood. Instead, silence. 960 bodies, men, women, children, every single one dead, not killed by Roman swords, killed by their own fathers, their own husbands. In a single night, 10 men chosen by lottery, 960 victims. One final executioner who killed himself last, and 2 women survived. They hid in the water cisterns while everyone else died. This is what they saw. This is what really happened on Masada. Masada, a fortress on a plateau 1,300 feet above the Dead Sea, built by Herod the Great as his personal refuge. By 73 AD, it's the last Jewish rebel stronghold against Rome. The Romans have already destroyed Jerusalem, burned the Second Temple, crucified thousands along the roads of Judea. But here, on this rock, 960 people refuse to surrender. They're not soldiers. Most are families, women, children, elderly, led by a man named Eleazar ben Yair. Outside the fortress, 15,000 Roman soldiers. Legion X Fretensis, commanded by Flavius Silva. For 7 months, the Romans build, not just a siege camp, an entire system. 8 military camps, a stone wall circling the entire plateau, towers, catapults, and the ramp. A massive earthwork ramp climbing 375 feet up the western cliff, built by Jewish slaves, prisoners forced to construct the weapon that will kill their own people. It takes 7 months. Thousands of tons of stone and earth. On April 15, 73 AD, the ramp is complete. The Romans wheel a battering ram to the top. They smash through the fortress wall. The breach is wide enough for 100 men. But they don't attack. They wait until dawn. That night, the final night, is when everything changes. Not by Roman violence, by Jewish hands. Because Eleazar ben Yair makes a decision. Not surrender, not a final battle, not escape. Death, but not Roman death, Jewish death, on their own terms, by their own people. Eleazar calls everyone together, all 960 people, men, women, children. He knows what Rome does to captured rebels. The men will be crucified, slowly, over 3 days. The women will be raped, then enslaved, sent to brothels across the empire. The children will be taken, raised as Roman slaves, forced to forget their language, their God, their families. This is not a threat. This is Roman policy. It's what they did in Jerusalem, in Gamla, in every rebel stronghold. So Eleazar proposes mass death, but there's a problem. Jewish law forbids suicide. So they design a system, a method. 10 men will be chosen by lottery. These 10 will kill everyone else. Every man, every woman, every child. Then the 10 will draw lots again. 9 will die, 1 will kill them. Then that final man will kill himself. This way, no one commits suicide. They die by another's hand. The crowd agrees. Not unanimously, not joyfully, but they agree. Imagine that moment. You're a mother holding your 6-year-old daughter. Your husband draws a stone from the pile. He's one of the 10. Which means, tonight, his hands, the hands that held your baby, that blessed the Sabbath bread, will hold a sword and drive it into your chest, into your daughter's chest. Because that's mercy, that's love, that's the only choice left. Her name is Miriam, 23 years old, mother of 2 daughters, Leah, age 7, and Rachel, age 5. She kneels in the stone chamber, her daughters beside her. Her husband Jonathan stands before them, the sword in his hand. The same sword he used to defend the fortress walls. Now he'll use it on his family. Miriam closes her eyes. She recites the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Yonatan raises the blade. He aims for her heart, but his hands shake. The first strike doesn't go clean. It hits her shoulder. She gasps. Blood spreads across her robe. He strikes again, this time, the heart. She falls. Now Leah, 7 years old. She's crying. She doesn't understand. Yonatan kneels beside her. He tells her to close her eyes, tells her she'll wake with her mother in paradise. He's lying, and he knows it. The blade falls. Then Rachel, 5 years old. She's already unconscious, fainted from terror. The blade falls again. 3 bodies, his entire family, dead by his hand. Historian Josephus would later record that the men killed their families with a kind of loving violence. Loving violence? What does that even mean? The killing begins at sunset. By midnight, 400 are dead. By 2 a.m., 800. By 3 a.m., all 960 lie in the fortress. Fathers covering daughters, mothers clutching infants, an entire community gone in 8 hours. By 2 a.m., most of the 10 executioners are covered in blood, shaking, some vomiting between rooms. But they continue, because stopping now means everyone died for nothing. In the eastern chamber, one man, we don't know his name, reaches a family where the mother refuses, not for herself. She'll die willingly, but not her baby, 11 months old. She begs, she offers to surrender, to go to Rome, to live as a slave, anything. The executioner hesitates. Eleazar arrives. He explains what Rome will do. They'll kill the baby, slowly. For entertainment, in the arena, fed to animals, or worse, raised as a slave, never knowing her mother, never knowing her people. The mother finally agrees. She holds her baby, sings a lullaby, the same one her mother sang to her. The executioner raises the blade. The baby is still smiling. The blade falls. The mother doesn't look away. She watches, then she kneels and dies next. To Eleazar ben Yair, this isn't murder, this is mercy, because Rome will torture them for days, weeks. Crucifixion takes 3 days to kill. You suffocate slowly as your lungs fill with fluid. Rape and enslavement last years, decades. This, a blade to the heart, is quick, clean, dignified. This is control. The only control they have left. And 960 people agree. Or do they? By 3 a.m., it's done. 960 bodies lie across Masada. Now the 10 men face each other. They're brothers, cousins, friends, neighbors, men who celebrated Passover together, who defended the walls together. Now they must die. By each other's hands. They draw lots again. 9 will die. 1 will live to kill them, then himself. The 9 lie down in a circle. They hold hands. The final executioner, Josephus doesn't name him, moves around the circle, one by one. Each man closes his eyes, says the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Then the blade, 9 men, 9 prayers, 9 deaths. Now only 1 remains. He walks to the storerooms, sets fire to everything except 1 granary. He leaves it full, to prove they didn't starve, to prove this was choice, not desperation. Then he returns to the circle of bodies, kneels beside his brothers, places the sword against his own chest, and falls forward. Silence. The Romans breach at dawn. They expect resistance, arrows, spears, battle cries. Instead, silence. The first soldiers climb through the breach cautiously, weapons raised. They find bodies, hundreds of them. Josephus, the Jewish Roman historian, recorded the soldiers' reaction. They were unable to rejoice at the destruction of their enemies, because this wasn't victory, this was something else. The Romans search the entire fortress. They find the grain stores, full, enough food for months. The weapons, intact, arrows, swords, spears. These people could have kept fighting, but they chose this instead. But not everyone died. 2 women and 5 children survived. They hid in the underground water cisterns during the killing. Why didn't they join the mass death? Josephus says they escaped by chance, but think about it. You hear screaming all night. You hear your neighbors dying, your friends, your family, and you hide. That's not chance. That's choice. One of these women, Josephus doesn't name her, told the entire story to the Romans. She described the lottery, Eleazar's speech, the methods. Without her, we'd know nothing. But here's the haunting part. She survived, and she had to live with that, with the memory of every scream, every prayer, every moment she chose to hide, while 960 others chose to die. For 2,000 years, history called Masada heroic, a symbol of resistance. Israeli soldiers used to take their oath at Masada. Masada shall not fall again. But archaeology tells a different story. In 1963, archaeologist Yigael Yadin excavated Masada. His team found 11 pottery shards, each inscribed with a name: Ben Yair, Ben Yaakov, Ben Hezekiah, the names of the 10 executioners, and one extra, Eleazar ben Yair himself. But they also found something else: Ben Yair, Ben Yair. In one chamber, scratch marks on the stone walls, broken pottery, defensive wounds on one skeleton's forearms, the kind you get when you raise your hands to block a blade. This person didn't die willingly. They fought back, and they lost. So the question becomes, how many of those 960 deaths were truly willing? How many were coerced, forced, murdered by people who called it mercy? We'll never know. 960 people died on Masada by their own people's hands. For 2,000 years, we've called it heroism, defiance, the ultimate act of resistance. But was it? Or was it mass murder dressed as martyrdom? Eleazar ben Yair convinced 960 people to kill each other. Fathers killed daughters, husbands killed wives, and they called it mercy. Maybe it was. Maybe in that moment, with Roman torture waiting, death was the kindest option. Or maybe it was desperation, fear, control masquerading as courage. We'll never know for certain, because the 2 women who survived never told us what they really thought. We only know what they saw, but the scratch marks in that chamber tell a different story. Someone fought, someone refused, someone wanted to live, and someone killed them anyway. That's not heroism, that's tragedy. If you want to see more stories history tried to bury, the ones that aren't clean, or simple, or heroic, subscribe, because these stories aren't easy to tell or to hear, but they matter. Next video, what Alexander the Great did to 6,000 people in Thebes in a single day, including 300 priestesses who were considered sacred, untouchable until they weren't.